Okay, we're live. So let's go. I'd like to welcome members, officers, and members of the public to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work. Robbie.
Thank you, Chair. So, if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the Chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the Chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When members are requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on their microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the Chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? I'm not seeing any indications, so I will now hand back to the Chair.
Thanks, Robbie. Item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillors Ruth Brown, Councillor Louise Peace and Councillor Dave Winstanley. Having given due notice, Councillor Bryony May has substituted for Councillor Brown, Councillor John Claydon has substituted for Councillor Peace, and Councillor Mick Debenham has substituted for Councillor Winstanley. Thank you to all of them. There are no further apologies. I think we're all here. Item 2, minutes of the meeting, the 2nd of July, 2026. I propose we take as read and approve the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on 2nd of July 2026. May I have a seconder? Councillor MacDonald, thank you. If we could vote on the minute, unless anyone wishes to speak, we'll vote on the minutes, please.
The motion is carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3, notification of other business. There is none. Item 4, Chair's announcements. 1, recording. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. 2, declaration of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under the Chair's announcements on the agenda. 3, to clarify matters for the registered speakers. Thank you to the members of the public for joining us this evening. To confirm, speakers will have between 3 to 5 minutes to make their verbal presentations to the committee. All speakers will receive a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. At the end of your allotted time, you'll be advised that your time to speak has ended. Following the conclusion of your time, members will be invited to ask points of clarification. 4, debate procedure. In order to move to a debate on an item, we will require a proposer and seconder for a motion at the appropriate time in the meeting. This should take into account the information in the officer's report and will follow the officer's presentation and any public presentations, including member advocates, as well as any questions of the officer and points of clarification to the public presenters. As a reminder for members, should you wish to propose a motion contrary to the recommendations included in the officer's report, you'll be required to provide clear and evidence reasons for this proposal. 5, section 4.8.23a. For the purposes of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration for that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. I will take a comfort break at a suitable point in the meeting should proceedings go on at length. 6, meeting cut-off. As outlined under 4.8.24g of the Council's Constitution, if the meeting proceeds to 10:30 p.m, the item being considered at that time will be the final item considered at tonight's meeting. The remaining business will be deferred to the next meeting, which is scheduled for Thursday, the 3rd of September 2026. 5, public participation. For agenda item 6, I have Peter Bailey, Hayley Ward, Parish Councillor Paul Harding, Councillor Rolf Muntzer, Councillor Dominic Griffiths, Philippa Martin Moran. Thank you. And for item 7, I have Lorimer Mills, Matt White, Donna Matthews, Councillor Rolf Munzer again, Paul Derry, and Jonathan Aldridge. Okay, if we can move on to item 6, which is application 25009560P, land south of Stevenage Road, Little Wymany, Hertfordshire. And before we start, I think Councillor McDonnell is going to declare an interest.
That's correct, Chair. So I'll move to the back row.
Yeah, can I put,
Yeah, that's fine to move to the back row, but once the debate starts, you'll have to leave the chamber. Thank you.
okay, Sarah Kasperin to present. Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, you will have seen the written update, and in response to that, the agent has sent an email to assist, which includes commentary on the triggers for delivery of highway works, and that's available on the website if you wanted to see that. Officers have no further response to that email as we wait for highway officers' response on that detailed point. We previously proposed that that matter was going to be delegated to the Development and Conservation Manager. Another little verbal update, just on the written update number 6, you'll see that Or Nebworth is highlighted in bold. That should be struck through rather than being an addition. It should be struck through, deleted. That's the extent of my additional updates. So this is an outline planning application for development of up to 300 dwellings.
Sorry, Sarah, can we put the volume up a little bit? I think people are perhaps struggling to hear. It is quite quiet.
Oh, is it? Sorry. Okay. Okay. I'll lean in.
Thanks. Thank
Cool.
you.
Let me know if that's okay. I'll start the paragraph again. This is an outline planning application for the development of up to 300 dwellings with all matters reserved except for the means of access. The remaining reserved matters, scale, layout, appearance and landscaping will be the subject of future reserved matters applications. Members are also considering an in-application master plan as part of the proposal today, and this is detailed in the report. Conditions are recommended to secure particular technical matters. These, together with the master plan, will guide the details of future applications. On to the presentation, please. Is the volume okay? Thank you. This is the location plan showing the red line boundary of the site. Come back to it in a moment. Oh, that's it. That's the red line boundary. Next slide, please. Thank you. That's the aerial photo, again showing the red line boundary of the site with the existing village of Wymondley to the north and east of the site, and the A602 adjacent to the southern boundary of the site. Next slide, please. This is an access plan which shows the main vehicular access to the site from Stevenage Road in the northwest corner of the site. The alignment of the internal spine road shown on this plan has been optimised to minimise tree and vegetation loss. The details of this are set out in the arboricultural impact assessment and transport assessment addendum. Next slide, please. Further to the last plan, this is a photo looking east along Stevenage Road. On the right of the photo, it will be the position of the proposed vehicular access to the site. Next slide. This is taken in the same position, but looking westwards towards Blakemore End Road and Arch Road roundabout. Next slide. This plan shows the proposed active travel access to the north of the site along an existing access road. Next slide. Further to the last plan, this is taken from Stevenage Road, showing the existing access. Next slide. This photo is taken further down the access road at the point where the site opens out. Cute. This plan shows the proposed emergency access to the west of the site from Blakemore End Road. Next slide. Further to that last plan, this is taken at the western end of the site, looking west along the emergency access route back towards Blakemore End Road. Next slide. So these are site photos. So this is taken in the same spot as the previous photo, but looking south across the site. Next slide. Again, this is taken from the same spot, looking east across the site. Next slide. This is taken on the eastern boundary of the site and shows the public right-of-way access to the site adjacent to the playing fields and tennis courts. Next slide. This is taken on the other side of the gate, looking west across the site. Next slide. This is taken from the same spot on the public right-of-way, looking north. Next slide. This photo is taken further down the public right-of-way, looking southwest across the site. Next slide. Again, this is taken from the same spot, looking south back towards that access gate. Next slide. This photo is taken at the point where the public right-of-way leaves the site. This route leads to the car park at the rear of the former Bucks Hedge Public House. Next slide, please. This photo is taken from the corner of the playing fields, looking north across the site. Next slide, please. And this is taken from the same spot, looking west across the site. Next slide. This photo is taken at the southern tip of the site, again next to the playing fields, looking north. Next slide, please. This is taken from the same spot, looking west across the southern boundary of the site. That's all the photos. So this is the land use framework plan. The following slides show the master plan and framework parameter plans. The combined master plan framework document and the design and access statement set out the guiding principles for the development, organised around housing, access and movement, social infrastructure and the environment. These plans spatially illustrate how these principles are likely to be accommodated on site. Next slide, please. Sorry. That first plan, the land use framework plan, showed the areas of the site for residential use and green infrastructure. So this plan is the development areas parameter plan. This is the developable areas. The purpose of the plan is to fix the site, the size and location of the proposed development parcels. Next plan, please. This is the built form framework plan. It includes details of the primary and secondary street frontages, potential locations for landmark buildings, and key internal views looking into the site and within the site. Next slide, please. This is the building heights framework plan and shows maximum building heights in the development parcels being restricted to 1.5 stories in the yellow area, 2 stories in the brown area, and areas and 2.5 stories in the red areas. Next slide, please. This is the access, active travel and vehicular hierarchy plan. It shows the locations around the perimeter of the site for proposed access points, details of active travel routes and indicative street hierarchy within the site. Next slide, please. And this is the green infrastructure and play framework plan. It shows the existing trees and vegetation throughout the site and indicative locations of play areas. It also shows the location of the proposed green spaces, including the north to south and east to west green corridors. Next slide, please. And lastly, this is the illustrative master plan. It shows an indicative site layout showing up to 300 residential homes that can be accommodated within those developable area parcels. So in summary, this is an outline application on a site which is allocated for housing in the local plan. The proposal will deliver up to 300 new homes, of which 40% will be affordable housing. The delivery of housing weighs significantly in the planning balance, given the council's current 5-year housing land supply position. It's considered that the public benefits associated with the proposed development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the identified harms. Overall, the proposal would accord with the NPPF and the local plan taken as a whole. In terms of planning obligations, the proposal will secure financial contributions for HCC, growth and infrastructure, highways and the NHS. It would also secure affordable housing, previously mentioned, contributions for the parish council and several sport facility contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Do members of the committee have any questions for the planning officer? John.
How many homes are there in Little Wymondley at the moment?
In Little Wymondley. I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out.
We'll hear from, we'll hear it.
Okay. Did you want to return to that, Sarah?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
I
of
will.
course.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions for the planning officer? Tom Tyson. Tom.
Thanks. Sarah, there's some concerns expressed about flood risk associated with this. And I noticed from the flood risk assessment that actually says that the site itself is at low or negligible risk from flooding, all sources of flooding. Is there any realistic possibility that the build of this site would have a knock-on effect further down towards Stevenage Road and the other areas of Wymondley?
So all sites need to meet the need of their own site and address the impact. So all surface water will be dealt with within the site. And the LLFA, they initially had an objection and the applicant addressed those points, and the LLFA withdrew their objection and support it and recommended conditions for some further detail. So the applicant has done everything that they were supposed to do in terms of drainage and make sure that that is all met in accordance with policy.
Okay. Do we have any? Tom, did you want to come back or?
No, I think that's answered the question. And what you're saying is that everything will be dealt with on site and there will be no further impacts elsewhere.
Okay. No further questions? And in terms of the question on the numbers, I guess you can. Will you come back to that at the end of the? Sorry.
I can come back now.
Then there you go.
There's 480 homes in the Wymondley parish. That include Great Wymondley? For Little Wymondley, yeah, 480 for Little Wymondley.
Okay. I have the first public speaker I have registered is Peter Bailey. Peter? Peter, you've got 3 minutes, and I will let you know when there's a minute left.
Chairman, members of the committee, attendees of the room. Just a brief introduction who I am. My name's Peter Bailey. I have been a Hitchin resident for all my life. And it's about time we stopped all these stupid houses being erected in places that are not required, especially in this area. So firstly, thank you for allowing me to speak with reference to the planning application for 300 dwellings on land of south of Hitchin or Wymondley. I've spent some time reading much of the material related to the above matter, and I'm sure all the I's have been dotted and the T's crossed to try and push this application to the next stage. However, I do have some serious concerns, especially with today's climate conditions. Noted that nobody from Environmental or Affinity Water are here. Concern 1. Over half the country is in drought conditions, and with Hitchin having very little rainfall in the last 6 weeks plus, and a hosepipe ban in place, what is the impact going to be with these additional dwellings? As we have been told, this may be the normal now, as seen in the last 5 years with climate change. Surely any additional dwellings will have a serious impact for all of Hitchin and surrounding areas, affecting Affinity Water. I may have missed this in the report, but Affinity Water did state being within a water-stressed area. I did not see any mention about drought conditions in the report, which I feel is quite a big issue, especially as we start to use bottled water or standpipes in the near future as the water gets used up quicker. Concern 2. There's already another 700 dwellings being built on the other side of Hitchin, and the amount of dust and air pollution in that area I feel is unacceptable. So the same will happen on this site, I assume. The measures being taken to avoid this do appear to be at a very low level, token gesture maybe.
1 minute.
Concern 3, traffic pollution. With 2 to 3 cars per household, these were the figures stated in the dwellings in Stopford Hitchin Road area, which means there will be an additional 600 to 900 additional cars on the road. The impact of these vehicles will make Hitchin Stevenage gridlocked, not to mention the poor air quality. Concern 4. Has anyone done a surveillance activity to see how much radiated heat is going to be generated by all these dwellings from these buildings? If left alone, the heat would be absorbed into the ground and not reflected back into the environment. There is a solar farm being built up near the A1M, so surely there must be some radiated heat from this area. All these new dwellings are increasing, adding to the carbon footprint climate control issues. Where is the result? Tell me different. Please note, there are other buildings taking place around St Hippolyte all over the area. This situation is only getting worse. Finally, if anybody wants any water, I have some water. This could be the thing we'll be doing in the next few years if we have these dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for summing up so promptly. Do we have any points of clarification from members, the public speaker? No? In which case, I will call our second public objector, who's Hayley Ward. Hayley, you've got 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's a minute left. Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. So in concluding the examination in public of the local plan, the government's inspector recognised several issues with this site, noting traffic was already a problem, and with regard to flooding said it was imperative that the new homes here do not make matters worse. He also required further work on transport and contaminated land. I refer members to the local plan policy SP2 and the council's own evidence to the local plan examination on Little Wymondley, which states development should be allocated to higher order settlements in the first instance as the most sustainable approach. As the strategic sites around the main towns have not yet delivered, why is the answer to accelerate one of the village locations that the examination evidence regarded as inherently less sustainable, rather than first addressing delivery of the more sustainable strategic sites upon which the local plan spatial strategy was based? The NPPF Its purpose is to achieve sustainable development. That aim is reflected in the NHDC local plan policies and in our Wymondley neighbourhood plan, Wymondley Parish neighbourhood plan, not Wymondley Village, which forms part of this plan, the local plan, to protect the health and well-being of its residents. The Parish Council commissioned nitrogen dioxide monitoring from 2017 to 2019 using the same laboratory and methods used by this council. The results show concentrations repeatedly exceeded the legal EU limit right next to the site. So the neighbourhood plan adopted policy TM3 and thus the statutory development plan already recognises air quality as an issue. Yet the applicant relies upon monitoring during COVID lockdown when traffic and aviation activity were minimal. Since then, Luton Airport has permission to double its capacity. We're on the flight path. Major developments close by will generate additional traffic, yet no highway improvements of a comparable scale are planned to address these cumulative effects and emissions. Air pollution is not an environmental issue, it's a public health issue. So has today's air quality been properly assessed, or has the applicant relied on exceptional period during national lockdown 6 years ago? The site's a former chalk quarry, has areas of made ground and historic landfill. The applicant notes the ground is compressible and therefore potentially unstable. The Environment Agency confirms the presence of a principal chalk aquifer, an important source of drinking water. They question the extent of contamination investigations undertaken and require further work to ensure groundwater is properly protected. They say piled foundations could create pathways allowing contaminants into the aquifer. So have robust and thorough investigations on the ground been done, or is the applicant relying on generic assumptions and desk research? We also have a well-documented history of flooding, including a significant event which triggered a Section 19 report. That report concluded flooding was caused by a number of issues, included saturated ground, land drainage, and the topography of the village. The football pitches next to the site are waterlogged over winter, and the site lies steeply uphill from existing homes. How can existing residents be assured they will not be flooded as a result of this development? So honestly, has this proposal demonstrated it satisfies the statutory test of sustainable development? In the evidence before you, if you cannot answer yes, I ask respectfully that you defer or refuse permission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do try to be generous with timings, but and I did fail to give you a minute's warning, so I was slightly more generous. Do we have any points of clarification for the public speaker from the committee? No? Will we move on to our third public speaker, Parish Councillor Paul Harding. Councillor Harding, you have 3 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Well, good evening, Chair and members. Wymondley Parish Council believes that in its present form, the application does not meet the local plan WY1 policy objective. You will, I hope, have read our full response to the officer's report. I'll pick up on one central theme, that of sustainability. This development would approximately double the size of Little Wymondley, 320 homes to be precise. We are not opposed to new housing, particularly much needed social housing, which we proudly provided 140 homes to previous generations. But development must be proportionate, properly planned and integrated with the existing community. Given the scale physical constraints of this site, we have serious doubts that can be achieved. Looking at local services and community facilities, Wymondley has no shop or GP surgery and very limited local facilities. Residents have to travel elsewhere for work, education, shopping, leisure and healthcare. Doubling the population without providing the services needed to support it risks creating an increasingly car-dependent community. That is difficult to reconcile with sustainable development. Provision of cycle access to Stevenage misses the key point that the major destination of choice is Hitchin. The failure of the planning officer to include a village hall in the Section 106 requests is particularly concerning. This facility, encouraged by Herts County Council and Sport England, could help create a sustainable and integrated community. We ask that this key provision is included. There is also uncertainty over who will maintain and pay the drainage, flood protection measures, roads, paths, playing areas and open spaces. Indeed, there isn't all of which must be maintained at high quality. Otherwise, we will be flooded. Indeed, there is no feasibility study to prove that the
1 minute.
40% affordable homes are actually viable. So finally, looking at the cumulative effect of impact, Wymley is already dealing with solar developments and the pressure from other developments in the area. These impacts cannot be considered in isolation. This application must be judged in the real-world context of a village already at breaking point. Taken together, these concerns go to the heart of a sustainable development. The question is not simply whether houses can be built here, it is whether a development of this scale can be properly integrated, provide the services and infrastructure residents need locally, and avoid unacceptable additional pressures on the existing community. Wymley Parish Council believes the answer is no. We therefore ask the committee to refuse the application on clear, robust and policy-based planning grounds, and in particular, failure to meet the clear WY1 policy objectives set out in the local plan. If members are not minded to refuse, we ask that the application is deferred until the outstanding issues are resolved and members have a chance to make a formal visit to Wymondley before reaching a decision. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harding. Do we have any questions for points of clarification for the speaker? No? Okay, then we have our first of our two member advocates, Councillor Rolf Munzer. No, we switch the order again. I'm sure I've banned that, but in this case, since it's you, Dominic, I'll let you go first. Dominic, you have 2.5 minutes. I'll let you know when you've got a minute left.
Chair and members of the committee, I urge you to refuse the planning application for site WY1 in Little Wymondley on highways and traffic safety grounds. The application has used evidence from a traffic report in 2020. However, it fails to mention that this data is fundamentally flawed, as it was gathered during peak COVID-19 restrictions. Clearly, the data based on a time when commuting and traffic patterns were an all-time low cannot possibly be used to reflect real-time commuting patterns. Subsequent surveys have also been conducted to rectify these misconceptions, but they are also invalid as they erroneously were conducted at the wrong end of the village and failed to take into account the pinch points at the key areas of the village. Therefore, the application is sadly based on entirely misrepresented data and gives a fabricated illusion of spare capacity. Little Wymondley's roads are already under severe strain. Adding hundreds of extra daily vehicle movements into our narrow lanes through constrained junctions, including the Ashbrook Junction into Hitchin, and as we know, the heavily congested Junction 8 roundabout could severely worsen highway safety and flow. The Highways Authority itself raised formal concerns on these grounds originally. Paragraph 115 of the NPPF requires refusal where there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or severe residual cumulative impact. You cannot make a sound, legally robust decision on this distorted data. The application, therefore, is premature. Furthermore, on the issue of transport itself, must be noted that the Little Wymondley is a small settlement with extremely limited facilities for residents. Simply put, transport is everything here. Residents are faced with poor commuting options to Stevenage or Hitchin already. One of our 2 bus routes has already been cancelled, and Arriva's CEO has confirmed to me that no route will be added, even when informed about the proposed development. They will not add a new route to the village. Throw in another 300 residents, the lack of a cycle lane, the lack of safe footpaths across busy, dangerous motorway slip roads, and no easy way to access the nearest towns, it becomes not just a matter of convenience, but one of safety. Not only that, but finally, the planning inspector, Simon Berkeley, in his report on the North Hertfordshire local plan, acknowledged that traffic in Little Wymondley was already a problem, and this development would unavoidably exacerbate it. Those were his exact words, unavoidably exacerbate it. For those reasons, I would ask you to either reject or delay the application. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Do we have any points of clarification from Dominic? Councillor Tom Tyson. Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I was going to ask you about public transport in Little Wymerley, and you raised it yourself. Can you just outline what the extent of the bus service actually is at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. So as mentioned, we have one bus, but as my colleagues over there are currently talking, it currently doesn't exist in our village due to the solar farm works. So the parish council have taken it upon themselves to run a community bus service during the time that the solar farm works are currently going on. This was delayed due to issues with the county council and the bus and the solar farm not communicating with each other. I mentioned one of our bus routes has been cancelled. I spoke to Arriva themselves, and they said it doesn't matter how many houses are going to be built there. They're not going to put a new one in. In addition, the bus itself regularly doesn't go through the whole village because there's so many cars, because there's so little parking, that they just don't visit half of our village. They can't get down there. So residents are left just waiting at the bus stop for no bus to turn up, because sometimes it'll get up there and find it can't come back and it'll have to reverse down the road, etc. And our concern
This is a point of clarification, not another 2.5 minute speech. Just a
thank you,
reminder.
Councillor Mason.
Try.
Thanks. I'll end there then.
Councillor Bryant, Val.
I best not ask you about buses. I don't.
Which is Val's favourite subjects. That's a shame, really.
Subject. Yes, I'm trying to get a question out of this. That there have been hiccups recently, I believe. Question in the bus service, which hopefully will be put right, because the government is giving more powers to the local authorities. I was interested to hear that these normal problems, because I'd never had those problems going on the Hitchin to Stevenage bus. But I'm going to leave that there. I know it's not a question, but what I really wanted to talk to you about was the works at the moment, which are on the solar farm. So am I right in thinking the works at the moment, which is causing all the problems, are to do with the solar farm, and that's why you haven't got a bus service at the moment?
Yeah.
So may I ask a quick supplementary question then?
Please.
Do we have a timescale for when that work is going to end?
Yes. Yeah. So the latest would be mid-October.
Okay. Yeah, sometime before they're going to start building on this, should it go through. Okay. Any further points of clarification to Dominic? No? This is where it gets complicated. So our second member advocate is Councillor Muntzer, who's both a county councillor and a district councillor, but neither of them for either Little or Great Wymerley last time I looked on a map. Okay. I did look at the rules on this, because we try to accommodate people who want to speak at the committee, and I think the guidance suggests if an application is major or of significance in the wider area, which is why you were allowed to speak today. What I would request, though, is you make it clear in your contribution how this would affect your constituents, rather than go too wide. Yes. Councillor Muntzer, you have 2.5 minutes, and I will let you know when you have a minute left.
Colleagues, the theme which runs through every single contribution you have heard tonight is one of sustainability. That's what unites us. The statements made are not ones that are baseless, imaginary, or fanciful, but they're ones founded in years of lived experience by ourselves, our residents, and our community. As you've already heard, Wymerley already suffers from chronic congestion and roads which are in a poor state of repair. In fact, the parish council was the first earlier this year to declare a traffic emergency to highlight these perils. But what is proposed within the Section 106 agreement in order to alleviate those problems? I would submit there is absolutely nothing at all. Now, I spoke to the highways officer to inquire as to why highways removed their objection. an objection they maintained for many years. And he said that it was because the applicant had decided to contribute funds towards the active travel route to Stevenage. As you have already heard, that is going to be a white elephant because people in Wymanley look to Hitchin, not Stevenage. Nothing is proposed to improve road safety and the traffic flow at the A602 Ashbrook Junction and the Three Moorhens roundabout. Both junctions are going to see a significant increase in usage as a result of this development. Yet nothing is proposed in order to alleviate those concerns and those realities. Now, Wymanley School is celebrating 70 years of educating local children. And this proposed development presents a new chapter for the school. But we must be careful not to set the school up to fail. Now, urgent work is needed in order to bring the school facilities into the 21st century. But with ever pressured budgets and demographic change across Hertfordshire taking place, there is an important question as to whether the proposals of the Educational Authority are appropriate in 2026, or whether the County Council should be taking alternative action to support Wymanley School in continuing to deliver a local and personal education within a rural environment. We've already heard of issues surrounding flooding, and it's important that a site-specific flood risk assessment is undertaken to understand better the implications and the impact of this development on the Stevenage Road, which is frequently known to flood. Now, this application has fundamental flaws, and there are a number of legitimate unanswered questions which people deserve answers to. That's what you've heard tonight from members of the public, the parish council, the district councillor and the county councillor. You have the power to answer those questions. So I urge you to reject this application, or at the very least defer it to get those answers.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. I'm still in the dark as to how it affects people in Kimpton and Codicott, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually. Do we have any questions? As county councillor, yeah, but as Councillor Munster knows, he's not here as a county councillor. He's here in we've allowed him to speak in a district councillor capacity, as he is quite aware. Councillor Val Bryant.
Thank you. 2 questions. First of all, I see that Section 106 monies, there is £416,000 allocated to the primary education. You were talking about the school being set up to fail. Could you explain how these two actually affect each other? Is nearly £250,000 not going to help the school?
Well, I'm happy to answer that question. I think, as has been highlighted, that the exact figure for the contribution requested by the local education authority is closer to 2.9 million. I think the issue is that you speak to the head teacher and the governing body of the school, and they are very much concerned that increasing the number of forms of entry of the school is going to leave the school in a very unstable financial position, particularly with the demographic change that we are seeing right across Hertfordshire. So, as I said in my contribution, what I am seeking to do and what we are seeking to do is to ensure that there is a more up-to-date educational assessment to determine whether or not the course of action of which is proposed by the county council is indeed the right one, or whether that money should be diverted in order to upgrade the school as it currently in its current form of entry.
Councillor Bryant, you can have a second.
Sorry, I've got my notes. I've got my K's and my M's mixed up there, but you got the idea. There's money there. The secondly is about the traffic emergency. I racked my brains and I couldn't think of any traffic emergency which had been called. I know that, was it on 7th of August, I think that a lorry got stuck under one of the railway bridges. I've not seen anything else about it in the newspapers. Is this in the local council records?
I don't think so. So thank you very much, Councillor Bryant. The traffic emergency was declared by the parish council because the about 5 or 6 months ago, and it was very well publicised within the local press because of the fact that it is indeed unprecedented, and it is the parish council, as I'm not a spokesman of, but my understanding was the design of that measure was to draw more attention to the fact that Great Wymondley is suffering from a significant amount of HGV congestion, which then seeps down into Little Wymondley and has an impact on road safety for residents there, but also as well the general state of repair of the highways in and around Wymondley is not up to scratch. And we are engaging separately with the county council as to smaller measures that can be implemented in order to improve that. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, with the significant amount of vehicular movements that this development would increase, what is needed is not a small pot of money in order to go and fix very small problems. What is needed is a fundamental upgrade of the infrastructure, of the road infrastructure in and around Wymondley, in order to accommodate and mitigate the impacts of that vehicular movement, those vehicular movements.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions before I have one? I'm afraid. Sorry, I should have clarified. It's only members of the committee who can ask. My apologies. I had a question regarding the schools. Ralph, you said about demographic challenges to the school or whatever. I just wondered if you could clarify what you meant, because my understanding is due to falling birth rates. What the challenge we're seeing to Hertford schools at the moment is falling enrolment and challenges to the schools not having enough children. So I just wondered what you meant by the demographic challenge to the school.
So without wanting to move too far away from this application, as you know, across Hertfordshire, we are seeing a decline in birth rate. It's projected that there are going to be 84 forms of entry less in 2030 when compared to 2015 numbers. That's why the county council is proposing and has closed a number of schools, and it's why, and particularly in Hitchin, that is a priority area from discussions that I've had with education officials as to looking at to better understand what is the future educational provision within in and around Hitchin. So those studies are currently ongoing, and therefore they of course could impact Wymondley. And it's important that we don't set the school up to fail by saying, well, let's go and increase the primary school, when in fact there might not be a need for that increase because of the demographic change of which is currently taking place. Now, I've spoken to the head teacher, and she is not, both herself and the school governing body have significant questions of the local educational authority as to what the impact of increasing the size of the school would be on the nature of the school. And I think, and of course then the financial position of the school, because it will be, even if you upgrade the school in say 2030, the time that it's going to take for the children to go and move into that school in the sort of 10 years is quite a significant period of time. And of course, schools only get money if they have pupils. So the risk is that at least in the short to medium term, the school is put into a negative financial position. And that's certainly the concern of the governing body and of the head teacher.
Thank you. I'm still not entirely sure of that argument. Thank you very much for the explanation. Do we have any further speakers, points of clarification for Councillor Muntzer? No? Okay. Then I will call the applicant's agent, I believe it is, Philippa Martin Moran. Philippa, you have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have 1 minute left.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, this is an outline application for up to 300 new homes on an allocated site in the local plan, which was adopted by this council post-examination. The Greenbelt designation was also removed through the local plan in 2022. The site is in a sustainable location within reach of services in Little Wymondley, Hitchin and Stevenage. Moreover, new residents with support facilities in the village. The application secures policy-compliant 40% affordable housing, which is 120 homes, of which 78 would be for rent and 42 intermediate tenure. Single-storey bungalows, flats and family housing are proposed. As such, the proposals support a wide variety of people in their housing needs. As members are aware, the need for new homes in North Hertfordshire is acute. The council has a 2.6-year housing land supply out of the required 5 years, a substantial shortfall of 3,347 homes. Granting this application for up to 300 homes on an allocated site would make a significant contribution to the housing shortfall and reduce the pressure to approve speculative schemes elsewhere. As this is an outline application, the details provided to date are commensurate with this stage in the process. Parameters are secured by condition, and further details will be provided at the reserved matters stage. The application before you fulfills the criteria in policy WY1. There has been extensive engagement over the last 4 years since the application was submitted, and technical consultees have no outstanding issues on the principles. The indicative master plan has been thoughtfully designed around the existing trees within the site, and the existing boundary planting is to be reinforced. Over half the site, 10.58 hectares, will be multifunctional open space. The landscape visual assessment determines that proposed development has very limited landscape impacts. The site has been divided into development parcels, and R2 was removed in response to heritage comments. There are 3 character areas proposed: the woodlands near the site entrance, the parkland to the north, and the meadows to the south. Each will have a distinctive design influenced by existing styles in Little Wymondley. The proposals have also been through 2 design review panels, and the final design is subject to design code condition, usually reserved for strategic sites. An acoustic bund is proposed to mitigate noise from the A602, and homes can be sited appropriately. As you've already heard, vehicular access is to the west of the site onto Stevenage Road with a shared footway cycleway, and emergency access is via Blakemore End Road. Based on robust data, the increased traffic has been agreed by highways officers to be acceptable, and the impacts on junctions are minimal and will be minimised through sustainable travel measures. Pollution levels have also been agreed with environmental health to be within tolerance. Additional pedestrian accesses are to be provided by the central and eastern connections, and the eastern connection will also be suitable for cyclists. These can be secured without third-party land if necessary and are considered safe by the Highway Authority. There are a number of off-site works to be delivered by the developer, including the Sickett Road junction to improve safety for children walking to school, a cycle footway along Stevenage Road towards Stevenage, and improvements to the junction 8 of the A1M for cyclists and pedestrians to travel safely. These are secured by condition. The Section 106 also includes approximately £900,000 funding to increase bus service. And these form part of the wider walking, cycling and wheeling plans, which are being drawn up by the council. The approach to flood risk and SUDS has been agreed with the local lead flood authority, and a site-specific flood risk assessment has been produced to inform this. All the flooding related to the development will be attenuated on site, and discharge rates have been agreed. Management is dealt with by condition. The approach to land contamination has been agreed by consultees, and further surveys and details again have been conditioned, and likewise the construction management is dealt with by condition. There are significant financial contributions in this Section 106, and as has been discussed, this includes £3.87 million to expand Wymondley School by a half-form entry, money for play and gym equipment, allotments and community gardens within the village, GPs provisioned nearby, and approximately £0.8 million overall for sports, including £300,000 for football pitches within the village. The applicant supports contributions being tied to the village wherever possible, should that be acceptable to statutory consultees, and this can be addressed through the usual Section 106 discussions. So in conclusion, this application fully accords with policy, relevant conditions are imposed, and the Section 106 will be finalised post-grant. And therefore, on behalf of the applicant, we respectfully request that Planning Committee resolves to grant outline planning consent without delay as per national policy for these much needed 300 homes based on these carefully considered proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippa. Are there any points of clarification from members? John. Sorry, my apologies. Claire was first, I think. Claire Binning.
Sorry, I can't look at you. I wasn't speaking to this. Some of the speakers have mentioned that the traffic and the air pollution reports were done during lockdown. Could you sort of talk to that a bit, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I've had confirmation from our highways consultants that the data used actually relates from 2015 when the traffic movements were higher. And so the worst case scenario was taken as opposed to 2023 for the traffic movements. And COVID data has not been used from COVID times for those points. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Clayton, John.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just wondering if you can comment on the point that's been raised about sustainable access to Hitchin specifically.
So the main focus has been on the upgrades to Stevenage, as you've heard. That is what has been requested by the Highways Authority. I do know that there is a wider plan that this obviously forms part of. That's a request that's been made to us, probably because I guess Stevenage is that bit closer. I think the reason that this is so important is that the developer has to deliver those contributions as well. So it's not a financial contribution; they're actually going to be delivered as well, which is quite a benefit. And then the other items will have to be dealt with as part of that wider plan. But this is what we've been asked to contribute.
Thank you, Councillor Tom Tyson. Tom.
Yes, I was going to ask the same question about this sustainable travel measures that you mentioned, but I've got another one also. You did say at the beginning of your presentation that the development would support the facilities in the village and generate new facilities, I think. My understanding is that there are next to no facilities in the village to support, apart from perhaps a pub and the school. Could you clarify a bit more about what you meant when you were saying that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as you say, there are some facilities. They are unfortunately less numerous than they were, and it's something that we have observed that unfortunately, when you don't have incremental, you have population growth, services do struggle. And I think this is something that these new residents are able to then come and be part of that village life. So the children will attend the school. That's actually very important to village life, and support other enterprises that remain and that also may come forward in the future as patrons.
Thank you. Councillor McDevan.
Cheers, Chair. Our friend from the parish council mentioned his disappointment that the village hall is not included in the 106 monies. Is there any way that could be accommodated somehow?
As I said, so the Section 106 has been based on requests by the statutory consultees. Certainly, if there's been a lot of contributions requested for sports in particular and childcare, the applicant has already stated that they'd be very happy for that money to be spent within the village. Obviously, we are bound by the statutory consultees and in discussions with the district council on that point. But we certainly, as what has been asked and accepted, we encourage and support that being spent within the village.
Councillor Bryant-Bell.
Thank you. Just for further clarification, so that means that there'll be flexibility from within the money that's been allocated already, rather than extra. I do know that the village hall ran at a deficit of £4,000. I think it was last year, last accounts. So we're not talking much, but I think a small input would be really, really useful.
Did you want to respond to that, Philippa?
Well, yes. I mean, just to clarify, yes, we are talking about the sums that have already been agreed rather than an additional sum.
Okay. Do we have any further points of clarification? John.
Sorry to jump in. Just wanted to ask briefly about vegetation clearance, removal of trees and so forth. Can I just clarify with regards to clearance of vegetation near the highways, the points of access, that efforts have been made to minimise that, and that the Highways Authority agrees that they're all necessary?
Yes, the priority has been to try and retain what we can, and yet it's absolutely in agreement with the Highways Authority. Yeah.
Okay, if we have no further points of clarification, I will ask the officer to respond to any of the issues raised. Sarah.
Thank you. Couple of things. The Village Hall, if you turn to the heads of terms, which is in the table under paragraph 5.16.4, you'll see the list of heads of terms there for contributions. And there's a couple of references to sort of community facilities. And under sports, so it's a couple of pages in, it says that if there could be a pavilion within WI1 for the sports, but if that is not forthcoming, then a financial contribution will be paid towards the existing pavilion and or new community hub on the site. So there is scope and flexibility for contributions to be made for that purpose, but with flexibility to ensure that when the time comes, a couple of years down the line, it can be spent in the right way. And I also note the childcare service, 0 to 2 years, that also references potential spending on a new community hall in Little Wymondley. So there is some flexibility there as well for the future. So I hope that's helpful. While we're on heads of terms, the primary education contribution is also in that table and identifies contributions to be spent on Wymondley JMI for half a form entry or provision serving the development. So as with most contributions at the county and at the district, we estimate what is needed to mitigate the impact of the development in terms of education and library and childcare and all the rest. We collect those contributions and spend it at the right time on what is needed. So it could be half of form entry to that local school or elsewhere, however it mitigates the impact of the development. And if we don't spend it in 10 years, then it can be refunded, which is a normal clause in a Section 106. So there's all of those provisions built into the Section 106 agreement. I also wanted to mention air quality and dust because it's been mentioned, and it's obviously very relevant at the moment because it's so dry. But this is addressed in section 5.13 of the officer report, and condition number 35, the construction traffic management plan, also addresses dust in a couple of those sub-points. So the applicant will need to submit further details for the Highway Authority to agree at a later date on managing that. Otherwise, there's no objection from Environmental Health. And just on the number of homes, 480 homes in Wymondley Parish. I can't find a figure for Little Wymondley, but I estimate it to be about 300, 320 in Little Wymondley itself. That 480 figure is from 2011. There was the latest census in 2021, and I can't find the numbers for that. So just to kind of give you an idea. I hope that's helpful, and I'd like Edward to respond on transport matters.
Thank you, Chair. So the applicant has already clarified about the traffic counts. Just to be clear, that data based in 2014 or 15 is above what it is now, and this is clear from a Department for Transport traffic counter on the A602, which saw 32,445 vehicles in 2014, 31,352, so slightly lower in 2023, and it extrapolates to 2025 at 32,117. So the applicant started with the 2014 or 15 figure. It varied depending on which junction they were looking at, and they extrapolated forward using growth figures, which would equate to about a 14.7% growth from there. And the reality is that there has been zero or negative growth. And they confirmed this with a traffic count in 2023 that showed that traffic was lower within the village than it was when they did the first count. So the Highway Authority is comfortable that the data being presented is an accurate reflection of an accurate forecast of traffic generated in the development. To be clear, the development itself will generate, by its own modelling, 112 trips out during the morning peak hour. So that's 112 vehicle trips out in the morning peak hour. And if you compare that to the number of vehicle trips that are seen on the A602, and therefore the percentage increase in traffic going through that junction because of this development, it is very, very small. It is well under 1%. So although it is acknowledged that there is an existing problem with the junction with the Stevenage Road, that itself is not a reason for refusing planning consent for a development. The test is whether the development itself, by itself, would create a severe impact. And the applicant has demonstrated clearly into the Highway Authority's satisfaction that the impact will not be severe. It is recognised in the Growth and Transport Plan, which is a county council document, which is the daughter document to the local transport plan, that this junction does need an upgrade, and it is described as signalisation and bus priority. And that would, and the applicant itself submitted a transport assessment addendum where it modelled the impact of signalising that junction. And that would improve the performance and certainly would make it easier for vehicles to get in and out of Stevenage Road. And that may come forward, but not with funding from this development. The County Council chose to focus the Section 106 funding on providing that cycle route into Stevenage because the modelling actually shows that this development would generate more trips towards Stevenage than it would towards Hitchin. Even if the existing residents in the village may perhaps make more trips to Hitchin, that's not necessarily the case for future residents. And they felt that it was important to provide an active travel link into Stevenage, to the Lister Hospital and to the town and to the railway station. And that is what the money we're focused on. But as the applicant said, there is a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for improving the whole of the route between Hitchin and Stevenage, and this would be part of that. And so that the rest would hopefully follow once additional funding can be found. On the bus service, just to clarify, that notwithstanding the extremely unfortunate loss of the service until October, it is currently operated by 2 buses. The applicant has been asked to contribute funding that would add an additional bus to that, so it would be a 50% increase in the service. So it currently operates hourly from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. towards Stevenage and 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Towards Hitchin. Adding 50% to that service would allow a half-hour frequency at peak times, extended hours, and a Sunday service. So there would be a material impact, in material improvement to the service, which would benefit the village as well as the new development. I think that covers the things. Perhaps it's just worth mentioning that you may have seen in the officer update a mention of St Ibolit's parish objecting to traffic lights. The note actually misconstrued that reference as being to traffic lights on Blakemore End Road, which is the emergency access. That's not what was being considered. It was traffic lights on the A602 Stevenage Road junction. And it would be up to the Highway Authority to decide what type of junction upgrade was most appropriate when it looks to do that work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Edward. Sarah, did you have any further points or indeed Sean, by the looks of things? Sean.
Very briefly, I'd just like to remind members that this is an allocated site in the local plan, and therefore the principle of housing development on this site is acceptable because it's allocated for such in the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members of the committee have any further questions to either the planning officers or the senior transport officer? No? Okay, before we move to debate, Councillor McDonnell, I'm afraid I have to eject you from the room. Okay. The officer's recommendation is to grant permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with material planning reasons, I shall be proposing that we grant permission. Therefore, I propose we grant planning permission subject to A, the completion of a satisfactory legal agreement and the applicant agreeing to extend statutory period in order to complete the agreement if required. B, providing delegated powers to the development and conservation manager to 1, resolve outstanding matters, including financial contributions, and 2, update conditions and informatives with minor amendments as required, and C, the conditions as set out in this report. Could I have a seconder, please? I think Val won the Councillor Bryant.
Sorry. Thought she's asleep.
So we move into debate. Does anyone wish to start the debate? Clearly moving to a short debate. Councillor Tyson, I knew you were going to.
Reluctantly, no. Well, I mean, I find this is one of these cases where, I mean, yes, it's an allocated site. So if we're looking at an outline application and the principle of development there exists because, as Sean said, it's an allocated site. So what we're looking at is some of the elements of that, which I think, you know, personally, I find quite concerning, but at the same time, there are some mitigations. I'm pleased to hear from Edward that the bus service is set to be increased, because I was going to talk about paragraph 110 in the NPPF and sustainability, and offering a genuine choice of transport modes, which, you know, this site clearly falls down on to some extent. The increase in size to the primary school is a 0.5 form entry, from my understanding of the 106 document. I'm not quite sure how you get a 0.5 addition. But it's not a huge increase in size. I'm hesitating, but I think that we haven't got much choice but to grant approval for this, despite the issues about sustainability, which I think have been quite eloquently dealt with. But when we apply that tilted balance, then again, you know, I think we're on difficult ground if we want to refuse this.
Thanks, Tom. That's Councillor Prescott Martin.
Yeah, I sympathise with the points Councillor Tyson's making. There are elements of this I'm uncomfortable with, not least of which it appears from the numbers that it's virtually doubling the size of the village. And nobody in their right mind could say there's not going to be any effect on the village when you're adding that many properties. But we have to use legitimate planning grounds if we want to find some reason to refuse, and I frankly can't find any. So with reluctance, I will support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. If there are no further, I would just like to say thank you, Councillor Prescott. I think you've just spoken for everyone on that and summed it up quite neatly. If we have no further comments, we will move to the vote, and the recommendation is to accept the application, to approve the application.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie. We will have a brief break there. Got there in the end. And if someone can let Councillor MacDonald know she's out of jail now. And on that point, can we go back on camera, please? Although it's Miss Martin's best line of the night, but so far, yes, he's on a roll. Is Councillor Prescott? Right. I'm on the right flipping page now. Where are we? Okay, are we live? Okay, with apologies for everyone for the delay. Item 7 is application 25028850P, land at Mill Lane, London Road, St Hippolytes, Hitchin. Anne McDonald to present. Anne.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. An update was posted on the website yesterday, which I hope everyone has had an opportunity to review. This provided details of updated contributions sought by Hertfordshire County Council Growth Infrastructure Team, one late response from a neighbour, further details from the Hertfordshire County Council Highways team regarding the projects the Sustainable Transport contribution would support, and also correct some minor errors in the report. Following the publication of this, I received a late response from St Hippolytes Parish Council requesting that any sports pavilion contribution is index linked to BIC's first quarter 2024. And finally, on regarding updates, I can confirm that the number of responses received on the application is now 49, 45 in objection and 2 are neutral, and that this supersedes paragraph 3.21 of the committee report. None of the responses raise matters not already covered in the committee report, apart from the one detailed in the written update. Please, can we move to the slides? Thank you. This is the site location plan showing that the application site lies to the south of Hitchin and to the east of London Road and comprises an eastern and western parcel of land. The application is seeking outline planning permission for the residential development of the eastern parcel for up to 41 homes with access off London Road. All matters are reserved, meaning all other matters are reserved, meaning this application is therefore seeking a determination on the principle of residential development on this land. Next slide, please. This is the development parameters plan submitted for consideration. It shows the area dotted in yellow where the new built form will be, along with the areas of the site that will remain as open land. This is the land to the south side on the eastern side and all of the area south of the Solihull Care Home and the western parcel. This plan also shows the creation of the fourth arm off the roundabout on London Road to be built as part of the Pound Farm development on the east side of London Road, and the splitting of the access road into the site with one link going north to join Mill Lane, which results in the existing junction with Mill Lane and London Road being closed, and one link extending into the site to the south. Also to note are the 2 nearby Grade 2 listed buildings marked with a red star and circle, Mill Farm on Mill Lane and Pound Farm on London Road. The southern part of the eastern parcel is to remain open, both to provide an area for SUDS drainage, as this is the lowest area of the ground level, and to keep the land open in front of the Pound Farm farmhouse to protect its setting. Thank you. Next slide, please. This plan shows a possible layout plan for the site. As set out in the committee report, the key considerations of this proposal are that this is a greenbelt land site and the impact on the trees. The committee report sets out that analysis was undertaken to conclude that this site is considered to be grey belt land within the green belt. The concept of grey belt was introduced in the December 2024 National Planning Policy Framework. This directs that when land on the greenbelt meets certain tests, the greenbelt protection in effect falls away, making the land eligible for development. Of key importance in this analysis is the advice contained in the Planning Policy Guidance Note on greenbelts, as this sets out how land should be assessed and concluded. This directs that when land makes a moderate contribution to stopping urban sprawl, that it can be concluded to be grey belt. In this instance, due to the existing development on the east, north and west sides of the proposed housing area, The proposed development area, as can be seen from this map, is considered to infill the existing built edge on the south side of Hitchin and is not considered to be development extending out into the green belt. As a result, this eastern parcel of the site is considered to make only a moderate contribution to preventing the urban spread of Hitchin. Along with meeting the other test requirements of being a type of development that is needed, as in the lack of the 5-year land supply, in a sustainable location and not harmful to the setting of the listed buildings, this land is concluded to be grey belt land within the green belt and acceptable for development in principle. Next slide, please. The committee report also sets out the conclusions of the recent Luck Greenbelt Review report. This map taken from that report shows that this application site sits within parcel HS7. The Luck report concludes that this parcel at 29 hectares is not grey belt land, as the area as a whole is important for the stopping of the spread of Hitchin to the south. However, the proposed development area is 0.87 hectares, and this small development area within the large area of HS7 is not considered to undermine the overall importance of area HS7 or the conclusions of this report. As set out in paragraph 4.3.20 and number 5 in the committee report, the Luck report itself states that local circumstances may dictate the need for small assessment areas in areas where there is a greater variation in the contribution to greenbelt purposes. In my view, this application site is an example of such a circumstance. Next slide, please. The impact on the trees is a major consideration of this proposal. This shows a tree survey taken from the application arboricultural assessment to notice the number of trees at the top of the eastern parcel. In reality on site, this area does form a small wood. Next slide, please. This is the plan from the recently served TPO showing the protected trees. Trees T1, T2, T3, T4 and groups 1, 2 and 3 are all retained. However, G4 at the top of the eastern parcel is affected. Next slide, please. This plan shows the 23 trees in red to be removed to allow the access to link north to Mill Lane. The linking of the access to Mill Lane and for traffic from Mill Lane to exit through the site via the roundabout is a requirement of the County Highways team for wider road safety measures. Of the protected trees, 3 horse chestnut and 1 oak tree are to be felled, and 14 of the trees, including the 4 protected trees, are graded by the applicant as B category quality trees where retention is desirable. The loss of the trees is a direct objection to the application that has to be assessed. As set out in the report, currently the NPPF does not make provision to retain protected or good quality trees, as mitigation and replacement planting are considered acceptable. Given the summer we're experiencing, that may change in the future. However, currently the NPPF directs that the tilted balance is not disengaged in this scenario, and in my view, the replacement planting can offset this harm, and this objection does not outweigh the planning benefit of 41 new homes, given the Council's current lack of the 5-year land supply position. I now have a number of photos that I'll try and move through more quickly, so next slide, please. This is looking south towards the site from London Road with the junction with Mill Lane just visible on the right-hand side. The tree in this frontage is being retained. Next slide, please. This is looking northwards from London Road across the site. The levels change with the land rising to the north can be seen. Next slide, please. This is looking north from the site from the entrance to the currently under construction Pound Farm development with the application site to the right-hand side. Yep. This is the Pound Farm site under construction. Next slide, please. This is the exit from Pound Farm where the roundabout is to be built with the application site on the right-hand side on the row of trees. So the 4th arm will then go into the site at that location. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is taken, this is obviously the junction of Mill Lane with London Road, which will be closed up. Next slide, please. This is taken on Mill Lane, roughly where the new link road will join. Next slide, please. This is taken on Mill Lane with a tree shown rear of the Elsie People Road traffic sign being retained and is the part of the G4 group that is being retained. Next slide, please. This is within the eastern parcels of the site looking south. Pound Farm farmhouse is visible on the left at the back of the frame. Next slide, please. Again, within the eastern parcel looking south. Next slide, please. Within the eastern parcel looking southwest. Next slide, please. So this is within the southern end of the eastern parcel where the open space will be. There's significant drop in levels to the neighbouring field, which is outside of the application site. Next slide, please. This is looking directly across the Pound Farm farmhouse, which is the Grade 2 listed building. Next slide, please. This is the southern end of the eastern parcel where the open space will be, looking west with the nursing home in the background. Next slide, please. This is within the eastern parcel looking north. The crane from the Pound Farm construction site is visible in the background. The trees in the centre of the picture, with the exception of the very tallest tree at the rear, are all to be felled. Next slide, please. This is looking towards the nursing home. The horse chestnut tree in the frontage is to be felled. The trees at the rear are retained. Next slide, please. This is taken in the western parcel, which is obviously going to be left undeveloped. Next slide, please. This shows an informal route into the western parcel from the southern end of Mill Lane. Next slide, please. And this is the southern end of Mill Lane with the western parcel of land on the right-hand side behind the trees. The application is proposing 50% affordable housing, as well as contributions to the County Council towards the growth and infrastructure teams and sustainable transport payments, as well as an NHS contribution and a sports pavilion contribution to the Parish Council. The application is recommended for conditional permission, subject to the revised recommendation as set out in the update note. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Anne. Do members have any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Tyson.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that, Anne, and thank you for a very comprehensive report as well, which was quite helpful to my understanding, except for I've got two questions. One is on the release of Greenbelt land through and the golden rules principle, because when I looked back over the PPF paragraph 156, I think it says that this is where land is released through plan preparation and or review. Is that actually the case here? Because this isn't to do with preparing a plan. It's a windfall site.
I think that's
all right.
It does say that, but that goes on to say on sites in the Greenbelt subject to a planning application. So the golden rules apply to sites such as this, where an applicant is proposing to build within the Greenbelt on the basis that it constitutes grey belt. And then you consider it against the provisions of paragraph 155 before that. But the golden rules do apply to this proposal. And the proposal would need to meet the golden rules for it to be acceptable. One of which is obviously affordable housing, 50%.
Tom had a second question.
Oh, I've cut you off in your pride, Tom. Sorry.
That's okay.
Please come back.
Thank you for pointing that out, Sean. Yeah, I should have read to the end of the sentence. And the other one for Anne was in the application site. So just the eastern side of it is proposed for development, and that's being taken out of the Greenbelt to become grey or considered to be grey belt. What happens to the western side? Does that become grey belt as part of the overall application, or does it retain its Greenbelt status because it's not being developed?
in my view, only the development area becomes the grey belt. If you remember back to the parameters plan, the western side of the site is to be remained open, and part of the application is obviously this is outlined, but the parameters plan shows that that would be public open space and there'd be enhanced sort of trails and things through it. So the plan is that that land will remain as open greenbelt land.
Okay. We've swapped round here. I've got Councillor Winchester next, Claire.
Thank you. I've got a question about the character of Mill Lane itself. And I'm a little bit confused about what happens with the new junction and the roundabout. And I wondered if you could clarify what you mean by closing off the existing entrance. I mean, Mill Lane is presumably a kind of an ancient lane. It's got a lovely character. It's quite nice to maintain that. And what happens to people that currently use Mill Lane, and how they come out, and whether the closed off bit will be open to pedestrians or not, and whether I've completely misunderstood that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we go back to the parameters plan? It might be easier to look at that plan, please. Thank you. The details of how that road will be closed off aren't yet known. Right. The traffic will go through the site and will exit, through the development onto London Road, because highways were concerned that having the existing junction with Mill Lane that close to the roundabout was just dangerous. So highways are insisting that that junction is closed and the traffic goes via the development and comes out at the roundabout. And the actual how that lane will be closed, I don't know what that will look like at this time.
Thank you.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. That's that. Yeah, that plan might be. I've gone past it now. Sorry. Thank you.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Clayton, John.
Thank you, Chair. But I just want to go back to the grey belt question, if I may, because I think it's an important one, and the acceptability of the site really turns on that. Do I understand correctly that effectively the position is that the determination of whether this land is grey belt is not only a property of the land, but the quantum of development on the land and context around the site specifically? So we're not saying that certain land is greenbelt land or greybelt land. It may be greybelt land, but only under certain circumstances, i.e. if you're planning to only develop a small bit of it. Because as we've said, the larger parcel that this is part of is not greybelt land. So is the position that it's greybelt if you ask for a small enough bit of it, and it's greenbelt otherwise?
No, it's grey belt if it meets the tests as set out in the report. You have to meet the various tests of the three purposes of the green belt, and then obviously there's the additional test in paragraph 155 about whether it's sustainable, whether development is needed, and whether there's other harms. If you sort of meet those 6 tests, then the land can be regarded as grey belt land. Obviously, it's not to do with the quantum of development, it's to do with the how it works. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but originally when the application was first submitted, there were dwellings further down on the western side of the parcel. My view was that that part of the site could not be regarded to be grey belt, because I felt that there was the context of the landscape was too open in that context, and that part of the land was or can be considered to have a significant contribution to stopping urban sprawl in that location, whereas the eastern side, due to the fact there's development on 3 sides and there's the open space at the site, the development area that's been proposed has got development on 3 sides. So in context terms, it's not extending outwards into the green belt. So because it's surrounded by development on 3 sides, my view as the case officer is that the land in that location only makes a moderate contribution to stopping urban sprawl out, because it's not new development without context around it. It's development with context around it. So that's my view as assessment as case officer. And then the PPG directs that if the land makes less than a significant contribution to stopping urban sprawl, you then have to conclude it is grey belt if it meets all the other tests.
Of course you may.
But did I understand correctly from your earlier response that the western part of the site would become grey belt by virtue of being part of the site?
No, because it's not being developed on. So my understanding, you might disagree with me, Sean, is my understanding is the grey belt section is only is the bit that's going to be developed, and the open part of the site remains undeveloped land in the green belt.
But it is changing.
In my view, no. It's a
It's
site of
not
two halves.
Okay, I'm slightly confused, but I think I'm getting it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I know what Sean's answer to this is going to be. But is there any protection that we can put on that remaining piece of land? Because if this is the edge of Hitchin, and this is almost the last piece of Greenbelt between Hitchin and St. Hippolyt's Village, can we, I know there's no application, so you can't put a condition against something that doesn't exist. I think that's what I was going to say Sean's answer was going to be. But is there any protection for that remaining piece of land?
Probably the best protection for that remaining piece of land would be to grant planning permission for this proposal and for it to be implemented, because it would then constitute public open space, and conditions would be imposed to effectively protect it as public open space. If you were to refuse this application, then the applicant could submit an alternative scheme, which would propose the development of the whole site. So there's no means of formal designation of protection of that land, but by granting planning permission for this scheme, it would effectively have protection as public open space. And once implemented, there are policies that would seek to resist residential development on public open space.
Councillor Prescott, Martin.
Thank you. That's actually kind of answered my question. I picked up, as I always do, a Google Earth photograph of the land, and of course the field opposite is not developed. So I'm looking at it going, what are they talking about? What development? But of course it is being developed. We can see from the photographs. So what concerns me, and I think Councillor Clayton was heading in that direction, is that something that is currently designated green belt becomes grey belt by association almost, and it almost gets a sense it's almost like a creeping cancer. So you've got one bit that's being developed, and that has, as a result, and I can see the logic of what you're saying, I'm not arguing that point, you can see that the eastern part of it actually it lends itself to some form of development, because as you say, it's already being developed on three sides. The next bit I was going to say was, well, hang on a minute. Once you've built the bit on the eastern side, then the western bit, you could use that same argument and say, well, it's already got, where's the harm? You know, let's grey belt, let's build 50 houses there. But as Sean is quite rightly saying, if as part of this development, that becomes public open space, it then gets further protection. And I think that's quite a compelling argument. I don't like the development as a whole, but I think we are getting, it's just kind of a very minor, but a silver lining there. That wasn't a question, actually. I'm sorry about that.
You beat me to it, Councillor Prescott. Claire Winchester. Claire.
Thank you. Just going back to the north part of the western section, where there's quite a lot of tree felling identified. The photographs indicated some significant and mature trees, which I think you said were significant and important. Will there be criteria attached to the kind of replanting in terms of species, size, age, and mix of species? Because mature trees could, as you suggested, could easily become scarcer, particularly with extended drought periods.
The landscaping is not part of this consideration. So this is an outline application, and landscaping will be a reserved matters consideration. But obviously the application will need to demonstrate suitable mitigation, or else it wouldn't be supported in the next stage.
Thank you.
John Clayton.
Thank you. I recognise that the roundabout associated with Pan Farm is a fait accompli, but I'm just wondering whether consideration of a route into this site that doesn't involve felling so many trees has been seriously looked at.
I believe it has. I think the in front of us is the only option I think Hertfordshire County Council Highways are prepared to support. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration in the planning balance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just to help me understand the grey belt issue. So we've talked about the western parcel and what the status of that would be if permission was granted. Just to help me understand it, hypothetically, the field that's to the south of the development site, is there any development that could come forward that could justify that field becoming grey belt?
That's not what's before us tonight. Obviously, there's the LUC report that has the whole area HS7 defined as not being grey belt. So in the event that a further application were to come forward, that would have to be considered on its own merits. But I don't think that can be a consideration of this application tonight. Thank you.
Sean.
Yeah, if I could add to that, that site would be immediately opposite the Grade 2 listed building, and may well result in harm to the setting of that listed building, which would potentially disengage the tilted balance. So that's a hypothetical question, but there are certain issues in my mind that would come to the fore when considering a scheme on that land to the south, but that's not before us tonight.
Thanks, Sean. If we have no further questions to the officers at this stage, which we don't seem to, we will move on to the first of our public speakers. Unless you've been shuffling the pack again, I have. I can't. It's Matt. Sorry, I wasn't sure if it's Mark or Matt or something else. I'm sorry, Matt White. You happy to go first? And you have 3 minutes. I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. Good evening. My name's Matt White, and thanks for the opportunity to talk tonight. I live in London Road in St Ibolets, just a few hundred yards from the land at Mill Lane. I've walked this land for 25 years, and tonight I'm speaking to object to this application. To someone driving past, it might not look like much. It's wild, it's scruffy in parts, not cultivated or tidy. Its value doesn't show itself to the infrequent observer from a car window or on a plan. It only reveals itself to the people who know it, who walk it and interact with it on a daily basis. It's a living, richly diverse piece of countryside in St Ibolets that has shaped and nourished our family life over the last 3 decades. A place cherished enough that many of the residents have joined us in objecting to these plans. In remembering this land, I've walked for many years, observing a barn owl sitting quietly on one huge ancient hornbeam a dull January afternoon. A bright morning in spring capturing the song of 25 birds on a single walk from the smallest goldcrest to the red kites above and disturbing green woodpeckers and buzzards quietly searching for worms. In early summer, I've excitedly watched the first bats of the year come out over the fields at dusk and the secret patch of asparagus that yields just enough for a few lunches. And during late summer, out gathering blackberries, walnuts and sloes from the hedgerows. And through the summer, the grasses across the eastern fields subtly shift in colour and scent from week to week in a way that you only ever notice if you work the same path day after day and year after year. And the perfectly symmetrical oak that sits in the middle of the site that my daughter insisted on climbing every time we walked the dogs. In autumn, we'd go out conquering among the chestnut trees near Mill Lane that are proposed to be felled. And we've watched half admiring and half terrified as the local teenagers build ramps in the field to launch their bikes off with far more courage than sense. This land is a living, richly diverse piece of greenbelt that has played a part in residents' lives for decades, a particularly vital amenity during the challenging times such as COVID, pandemic, and an area where families would go to walk for their hour of exercise. And this is exactly what Greenbelt was created to protect. Opportunities for residents to access the open countryside for outdoor recreation and protecting nature. It serves the purposes of Greenbelt as described in the National Planning Policy Framework to check unrestricted sprawl, preventing neighbouring settlements from merging and safeguarding the countryside. And the site does not meet any exceptions in paragraph 154, which allow for developments on Greenbelt. The Parish Council, the CPRE, Hitchin Forum state share the residents' view that this is Greenbelt. And tellingly, even the council's own commissioned Luck Greenbelt Review Assessment Report, referenced in point 4.3.22.7, reached the same conclusion. This is not Greybelt land. And with respect, the opinion of the officer that this land should in fact be Greybelt due to its small size is subjective and, in the residents' opinion, a weak conclusion not grounded in evidence. Thank you for listening. We urge you to refuse this application.
Thank you. That was positively poetic and brilliant. Do we have any points of clarification from the speaker? Poetry or prose will do. Our second public speaker is Lorimer Miller. You have 3 minutes. I'll let you know you've got a minute left.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of residents today. Like many in the area, we moved here because Mill Lane is a peaceful, safe place to raise children. It's the route we all use to get to the green, the pub at Godsmoor, and the countryside beyond. My daughter learned to ride her bike on this lane. She uses it to get to school, see friends, and to reach the recreation ground. Mill Lane is the only access to all these places. It's very narrow, unlit, and no footpath. You can see that from the pictures we just saw. The new developments would fundamentally change how the lane is used. We're looking at 41 proposed homes on top of 84 next door, plus more than 50 further down London Road. Mill Lane becomes the shortest route to the villages of Godsmoor, Charlton and Preston. That means many new drivers on Mill Lane, creating an immediate conflict with walkers, cyclists and even horse riders. We already know what happens when Mill Lane is placed under pressure. For 18 days in January, London Road was completely blocked. Mill Lane came to a complete standstill. Cars met head-on with nowhere to pass. Drivers reversed long distances. Arguments broke out. It was chaotic and hazardous, a preview of what could happen repeatedly after occupation of the proposed development. I understand that under the proposal, the London Road end of Mill Lane will be blocked off during construction. Residents will be required to use alternative routes via the main road network to allow for active modes of transport during the construction period. In which case, would the proposed site even need to connect with Mill Lane? Removing the Mill Lane connection would immediately and significantly improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists. The current design is a choice, not a necessity, and it is the least safe option available. We know that Highways has not objected, but their advice depends on the assumptions they were given. The assessment doesn't classify Mill Lane as a rural lane, it classifies it as an access road. It also ignores pedestrian movements, it lacks real-world observation, and it omits a road safety audit.
1 minute.
So the conclusions are flawed. As long-time residents, we collectively have the local knowledge to identify and fill in the gaps where necessary. National planning policy is clear. NPPF paragraph 115 states that development should only be refused on highways grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. In this case, there is no mitigation for traffic flowing directly into Mill Lane. Without proper assessment or safety measures, the impact on highway safety is not just unacceptable, it is by design. The proposed access is not just unfavourable for residents. Those in favour of the development might think twice about backing a scheme that places school children and elderly residents at increased risk. Members of the committee, I respectfully ask that this planning proposal be either rejected or at the very least deferred until a full safety assessment of Mill Lane has been carried out and appropriate mitigation measures are in place to ensure the safety of all who use Mill Lane. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any points of clarification from members of the committee? No? Then I will call our third public speaker, Donna Matthews. Donna, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for carefully considering the views of residents who strongly object to this planning proposal for this land that is not in the North Herts local plan. My concern on reading the report is its conclusion that this land should be treated as Greybelt. The planning officer's opinion, with respect, completely disregards the council's LUC Greenbelt assessment on page 99 of the report. This concludes that the land has a strong contribution to Purpose A and is therefore not grey belt land. The NHGC housing officer agrees that this land is in the green belt. The planning officer confirmed tonight that HS7 is not grey belt, and there is certainly no reference in the report to it being a site of two halves, as the officer said tonight. Yet the planning officer's report reaches the opposite conclusion, with the main reason given that there is development on three sites. That is not sufficient justification. The question is not simply whether there are other houses nearby. The question is whether this land performs an important green belt function as defined by the NPPF. I will explain why it does. Mill Lane is a historic country lane in a unique rural village dating back to the 14th century, home to the Grade 2 listed mill farm. The land is correctly described as open countryside and woodland outside the settlement boundary of Hitching. However, the planning officer is asking the council to regard this location as the urban edge of Hitchin and to assess the site on this basis. I ask the council to consider this application based on fact, not on opinion. The important question here is the land on the edge of Hitchin or is it on the edge of St. Hippolyt's village? I can answer that because I live on Mill Lane, directly opposite the woodland area. When applying for secondary school for my daughter, she applied for a place at Hitchin Girls' School. She was refused a place. Why? Because she didn't live in Hitchin. She lived in St. Hippolyt's. Now, the school's admission policy has changed since, but the location of Mill Lane has not. So the council has a duty to assess the site on its actual location and disregard the planning officer's request. This is the basis of the report's flawed argument on page 96. With regards to Purpose A, the land is open countryside with mature trees completely free of existing development. It is near to a large built-up area due to the extension of Hitchin already, and if developed would absolutely result in incongruous finger of development into the green belt that separates St. Hippolyt's from Hitchin. This means the land makes a strong contribution to Purpose A, not moderate. The council's own landscape matrix identifies land as providing a green buffer between Hitchin and Gosmore. This land is therefore a strategic landscape and settlement separation function. Absolutely contributes strongly to Purpose A. Building 41 houses on this land would extend Hitchin further south. This is the definition of unrestricted sprawl. There is also the accumulative issue that has been mentioned. The Pound Farm development was identified in the local plan and has already extended the built-up edge of Hitchin southwards towards St. Hippolyt's. This is the creeping cancer, as Councillor Prescott said tonight. You will be aware there's no justification in planning law approving a successive development on the basis that the previous development has already changed the character of the area, particularly when the land in question has distinctive qualities. The proposal requires removal of 24 trees, including trees protected by the TPO. The TPO was approved just 2 months ago by the council due to the value of the mature trees that are highly visible from Mill Lane and add to the character of the area. Retaining and preserving these trees will mitigate the effects of the previous developments on the area, but losing them would immediately impact the area's heritage character and sense of rural location. We know these trees support a variety of wildlife. My children listen to the twit-twoon of the tawny owls from their bedroom windows at night. This is not a case of opposing much-needed housing. It is about whether this particular site genuinely meets the national policy test for grey belt development. The council's own evidence in the report shows that it does not. I therefore respectfully ask members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any points of clarification for the speaker, please? No? Okay. Then I will call on our member advocate objector, Councillor Rolf Munzer. Rolf, you have a glorious 5 minutes to yourself on this one, and I'll let you know when you have a minute. I'm sure you will use it fully. I'll let you know you have a minute.
Thank you very much, Chair. Now, colleagues, you will have dealt with countless planning applications whereby the decision is very finely balanced, whereby it's not particularly clear when you walk into the room and you hear the arguments of which are made, which way the pendulum will fall. I would submit that the application before you tonight is incredibly clear. It is clear-cut. This is inappropriate development on crucial and important green belt land. And I think, as previous speakers have alluded to, it is important that we consider the reasons why the green belt is there in the first place. It is there to prevent urban sprawl and to prevent the conjoining, the merging of settlements. Now, in this case, in this circumstance, this piece of land not only protects St. Hippolyt's from being subsumed and becoming a suburb of Hitchin, but it also plays an important role to protect Gosmore as well from becoming a suburb of Hitchin. And it's crucial that when we are looking at applications of such importance like this one, we zoom out. We don't look at this in isolation, because as has been pointed out already tonight, this is a site not contained within the local plan. In the local plan, St. Hippolyt's was allocated over 200 new homes with very little infrastructure in order to support the additional strains, the additional pressures on community infrastructure and on our roads. The reality is that this development is going to increase that strain, increase that pressure even further with very little to offset it. And I want to just look in particular at the London Road, because as colleagues will know, the London Road is a major thoroughfare, not just for those who live in Hitchin and the villages outside of Hitchin, but also down in Codicott and in Welwyn and elsewhere, which is seeing a significant amount of development. People in those villages look to Hitchin as well, whether that be to go to the shops, whether that be to take their children to school, whether that be to go and get on a train to go into London. That is going to result in a significant amount of congestion on the London Road. It is going to result in the Three Moorhens roundabout being even more chock-a-block than it is every single morning, particularly in light of the 300 homes in Wymanley that has just been approved. So we must consider what is the impact on vehicular movements and what is the impact on our local roads. And the impact that arises from this development, from this application, is negative, with very little to offset that. But I want to just spend the last 2 minutes speaking about the matter of Greybelt, because as Councillor Caledon rightly points out, that is what this application hinges on. Whether or not this land is Greybelt. I have sought to argue, as have the members of the public, that this is not Greybelt land. It is indeed Greenbelt. But I think if you were to grant permission to this application, it sets an incredibly worrying precedent, not just for the parcel of land HS7, but for all of the land, which is designated as Greenbelt, which surrounds and protects our rural communities from urban sprawl. The officer says that this is an application of two halves.
1 minute.
That if you grant permission to this application, that the western side of the site is protected forevermore. We all know that that is not indeed the case. There is movement in policy. The best way that you can protect this land, the best way that you can protect the rural character of two communities, is to reject this application. But also, there is nothing stopping a developer from putting forward an application on that western site, nor is there anything stopping a developer from putting a speculative application forward for other parcels of land in HS7. Ultimately, this is a matter of interpretation. The interpretation of the applicant and the officers is that this is Greybelt land. The interpretation of the vast majority of the public and of myself is that this is indeed crucial Greenbelt land, which acts and performs an absolutely crucial function to check urban sprawl and to protect the unique identity and character of two rural communities. And I would urge you to reject it in the strongest possible terms.
Thank you, Councillor Manser. Do we have any points of clarification from the committee, Ralph? No? In which case, I will call on the applicant and their agent. I've got Jonathan Aldridge and Paul Derry. You've got 5 minutes shared. I'll leave you to fight amongst yourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Derry, a planning associate at Stantec. I've been working alongside the applicant Martin Grant on the site for a number of years, including through the pre-application process summarised in the committee report and culminating in the planning application in front of you, which is recommended for approval. Firstly, I'd like to set out the significant benefits that weigh in favour of the scheme. These include delivery of up to 41 dwellings, including 50% much needed affordable housing, which will make a substantial contribution to the severe housing shortfall in North Hertfordshire, noting that the latest information from the 31st of March 2025 shows 2,191 households on the North Hertfordshire Housing Register. Much needed housing delivered in a sustainable location in the Grey Belt. Stopping up of the existing Mill Lane London Road junction and redirection of Mill Lane through the site to create a safer junction. Provision of significant public open space areas, including full public access to the Western Field for the recreational use of the local community, which is currently in private ownership. A minimum of 10% biodiversity net gain will result in enhancement to local habitat. In line with the Home Builders Federation calculator, a scheme of 41 dwellings would support 142 jobs, including 2 apprenticeship, graduate or trainee positions, and council tax revenues of £82,500. The delivery of new homes and increased local population would also lead to increased support to the local economy. I'd like to focus on the 2 key areas that have been raised in relation to this application, the first of which is the site's status as Grey Belt. During the pre-application process, it was acknowledged by the council that, subject to any heritage considerations, the site was likely to be regarded as Grey Belt. There are no heritage objections to the application, and we agree with the officer's Grey Belt assessment set out in paragraphs 4.3.7 to 4.3.11 of the committee report. That assessment concludes that the site does not make a strong contribution to the 3 relevant Greenbelt purposes identified in the NPPF. The report also converts that the golden rules are satisfied. Taking these factors together, we consider the conclusion that the site is Grey Belt to be fully justified. I appreciate that the council has since published a Greenbelt assessment. However, the application site represents only a very small part of that parcel. The assessment parcel HS7 covers almost 29 hectares, whereas the area of proposed built development on our scheme is just 0.8 hectares, around 3% of the wider parcel. For that reason, while the findings of the assessment are noted, it's important that the proposal is considered on the merits of the actual development site before you today, rather than being judged as part of a larger area. The second matter relates to trees and the balance that must be struck between tree retention and highway safety. The proposed design diverts Mill Lane through the site so it can connect directly to the roundabout that will serve the approved Pound Farm development. This creates a clear highway and connectivity benefit. To achieve that, some trees in the northern part of the site would need to be removed. Access options to the south of the site were explored but not considered appropriate due to potential heritage impacts. Members will be aware that a tree preservation order was made during the determination of the application. However, that does not alter the findings of the arboricultural assessment regarding the condition and quality of the trees involved. Importantly, all Category A trees within the group are retained. The trees proposed for removal are of lower quality and can be replaced within the site through new planting. The scheme has also been specifically designed around the individually protected Category A trees, ensuring their long-term retention and integration into the development. Members will be aware that the council is currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. The application has shown that the site meets the definition of Grey Belt and the golden rules can be satisfied, and therefore the tilted balance is applied. In those circumstances, matters such as the loss of lower quality trees must be weighed in the planning balance against the benefits as required by paragraph 11 of the NPPF. I would just like to come back on the point about the Western Field as well. The original application as submitted did have a small element of built form in adjacent to the care home. It was the council's assessment that that part of the site couldn't be considered Grey Belt, hence why that part of the development was removed. Taking the point regarding the fact it will be public open space, it would also be part of our biodiversity net gain management plan for the future. So apart from the fact that
Can I ask you to sum up, please?
yeah, sure. Fine. We just agree with the benefits of the scheme clearly outweigh the identified harm, and therefore respectfully ask members to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any points of clarification from members? Councillor Clayton, John.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to ask about biodiversity net gain. As stated in the report, the net gain on site is expected to be negative, and it will be offset by off-site gains. Can I ask, firstly, why, given that a significant portion of the site it will not be used for residential purposes, why it's not possible to achieve the net gain on the site itself? And secondly, whether off-site offsetting will be within North Herts?
Yes, the problem with biodiversity net gain calculation on site is the baseline, which is quite high here. So you're working harder, in effect, to gain your credits back. We can't do that. Even with the western parcel, what we want to do is retain the public access element to it. We could scrap that, for example, and I don't know, make it a high value scrub habitat and completely cover it in scrub, for example, which would score higher, but you lose some of the benefits of the scheme in doing that. So we've had to strike a balance between what we can achieve on site and what we want to achieve on the site with regard planting and public access. We do not have a agreed position on where our external credits are going yet, but it will certainly be the council's preference, and I'm sure it will be the landowner's preference that they are in as close a proximity as possible.
Thank you. Any further points of clarification? Caroline.
Thank you. I'm not sure if at this stage in this application this is a relevant question, but it's a scheme of 41 houses, 50% of those are affordable. We've seen just recently that viability reports have come back battling to reach that. Have you done an initial viability report, and is this definitely something that can be delivered?
We've not done a formal one in agreement with the council, but we have all the heads of terms and the required contributions set out. So we are fully aware of what they are.
I'm going to cheekily ask Sean, I think, because I think there's a salient point on that.
When it comes, excuse me. When it comes to sites such as this, and we're talking about a grey belt site, there are only recent changes to the planning practice guidance indicate there are only two circumstances where an applicant can introduce viability, and those relate to a site that is classified as brownfield, and this is not a brownfield site, or larger sites that are complex and multi-phased. You could come up with a viability case to reduce the contributions. So in this case, the applicant would not be able to come forward with a viability case to reduce the contributions proposed and the affordable housing, which are necessary for this development to meet the golden rules. So it wouldn't be possible for the applicant to put forward a viability case to reduce the financial contributions or the affordable housing in this instance. If it was a brownfield site with exceptional cost, for example, the government has said it may be possible to introduce viability issues with such grey belt sites, but that's not the case in this instance.
Thanks, Sean. John.
Thank you. You mentioned that access points to the site further south were considered but rejected on heritage grounds. I wonder if you could just elaborate slightly on that.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you have a plan of the site in front of you, but we looked at all options in effect of how to get an access in, bearing in mind that we've got the Pound Farm development roundabout to consider with. So obviously we have to be a certain distance away from that to make sure we sort of would pass any safety matters in relation to that roundabout. That put us further down the southern part of our site, and literally the point where you would bring a road in is directly opposite the listed building, so literally directly opposite. So it was the heritage impact that is stopping us from putting an access further south, hence why we are back up at the roundabout.
Any further points of clarification? No. Claire, you look like you're indicating. Go on, Claire.
Thank you. Just to clarify on something that in the previous presentation about the negative net gain, biodiversity net gain. Am I to understand that the site is currently such high nature value that it's really, really hard to offset the damage that's caused by cutting down trees and turning that landscape into buildings? So that's quite a powerful statement, I feel. Can I just have some clarification on whether that is a significant planning matter that we can talk about?
That's not a significant material consideration because the Environment Act sets out that developments have to meet this requirement either on or off site, and that can't be used as a reason for refusal. So condition 1 by the biodiversity net gain condition recommended will require for a habitat management and monitoring plan to be come in so that these details are sorted out in the event that planning permission is granted.
Okay. Do we have any further questions to the applicant's agent? And then we will move on to the officer again shortly. No. In which case, I will invite the officer to respond to any of the issues raised.
Nothing to add. Thank you. Thank you.
Case, the officer's recommendation is to grant permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation this item, I should be proposing we grant permission. I'm not seeing any hands. Therefore, I propose that we grant planning permission subject to A, providing delegated powers to the Development and Conservation Manager to agree the outstanding Section 106 heads of terms related to the sports pavilion and any other minor changes to conditions and informatives as required. B, the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement. C, any necessary extension of time to complete the Section 106 legal agreement. D, the conditions and informatives as set out in the report, with amendments to condition 12 and 20 as outlined in the supplementary document pack. May I have a seconder? Councillor Fernandez.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. We're in debate.
We kept hearing that this is Greybelt land. But my understanding is it's actually not. Our own council, the council's own assessment very clearly said it was Greenbelt. The whole parcel was Greenbelt. And it's a very subjective view of the officer, and please don't think I'm being disrespectful, that because of the circumstances, it was a valid interpretation to say we could reclassify this particular part as Greybelt. But that's not where we are at the moment. It's Greenbelt, as per the council's own assessment. So if it's Greenbelt, with all the protections and all the reasons for their Greenbelt being in existence, why are we allowing ourselves to be drawn into reclassifying this as Greybelt? We've already heard from the local residents of the value of it. I think Councillor Winchester's point about the high bar or the high threshold for the biodiversity net gain, it's obviously a very significantly valuable site from a biodiversity point of view, and I accept that it's not grounds for refusal in of itself. But I do think it supports the argument that we do not necessarily have to accept the officer's subjective interpretation that says this part of the site should be redesignated as grey. My argument would be, why not leave it as it is? It's green, and we've had an assessment that's very recent, barely over a month ago, that has said that it's greenbelt land. We also, again, very recently designated all of the trees on the site as protected. Why on earth would we do that if 5 minutes later we're going to give somebody permission to chop 3/4 of them down? I don't see the logic in redesignating this site from green to grey purely and simply to gain a little bit of extra housing, which Lord knows we've got housing all over the district coming up now, and also for the possible benefit of having the western end of the development site used for public access, which we all know, and Councillor Munson mentioned it, is that in a year's time, they could come back and say, well, actually, we do want to develop it. And it's right next to a bit of grey belt land. So why not reclassify this as grey belt and give us permission? I'm not convinced, and I would therefore not be supporting the motion. The recommendation, sorry.
In answer to your question, why are we considering this at the moment? Because we have an application in front of us. Councillor Claire Winchester.
Thank you. It is the same point. My understanding is that this north parcel of the east field, because there's going to be development on 3 sides, counts as grey, but when the Pound Farm development wasn't there, it would only have been on 2 sides. So it feels like these are things that we can just reallocate as we see fit. And I am in favour of development in the right places and at the right times, but this feels like it's too minimal and too marginal a benefit in terms of the provision of affordable housing against losing a really valuable piece of natural landscape.
Thank you. I would remind members of the committee, if we're minded to go against the officer's recommendation, we just do need to give material considerations for it. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Chair. As we're rightly reminded at the beginning of every full council meeting, this council has declared a climate and ecological emergencies. And I think it's inconsistent with those emergency declarations, which are entirely appropriate and urgent, as we are also reminded, that we consider that we go along with a scheme like this, whose only viable sort of access is apparently through 23 existing trees, 4 of which are subject to a tree protection order. I don't think that's something that we should be countenancing given the scale of the site. I also think the loss of biodiversity on the site is regrettable. I recognise that in planning terms it's acceptable for that net gain to be provided elsewhere. But I do think it's regrettable that we will lose it on the site. I think it's also regrettable that the government has created this complicated, vague and largely unhelpful concept of grey belt, which we are now having to twist ourselves in knots to try and get our heads around. But I'm not going to second guess our officers' opinions on this because they're the experts and I'm not, and I accept that. I also recognise that the site has value in terms of providing housing, including significant fraction of affordable housing, and that's not to be sneezed at. But overall, I think the loss of the trees in itself and an important habitat, as well as the value of the land from the point of view of preventing urban sprawl, is sufficient that I simply can't support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Bryant Bell.
Thank you. Councillor Clayton has partially mitigated what I was going to say. I was concerned that Councillor Prescott talked about the officer's subjective assessment, when in fact for grey belt we've got these 6 tests. It's not subjective, it's against tests. And I think we've got to recognise that they are there, that this is not subjective. So I changed my mind slightly when I heard what Councillor Clayton had to say. Yes, we do have a climate emergency. Yes, we do have the situation where we've got trees, particularly 4 trees, which we've recently put a preservation order on. I am concerned about the rural nature of Mill Lane. I'm looking at it now on Google View. which of the houses does have a residential home. I have driven down before because I knew someone who lived right at the end. I'm just wondering whether that is being overbuilt. It is a difficult one. It will provide the sort of housing that we need, the percentage of affordable housing that we need. So it is a fine balance for us to decide upon. But I will be voting in favour of the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a couple of concerns. I think, as Councillor Bryant just said, Mill Lane, I was caught up in Mill Lane in the rain on my way to a parish council meeting when the London Road was shut, and it was absolutely terrifying. It is a really, really tiny lane. The second concern is that when you look at Google Maps and you just zoom out a little bit, this piece of land is particularly important. Buffer between Hitchin and St. Ibolitz. It's actually just so important, and it's important. I know we have to look at this application as just this application, but when you consider the Spurbury Solar Farm, when you consider Stevenage West, etc., we really can't afford to lose these bits of land. And I do also respect the planning officers in their weighing up and their looking at all the considerations for taking this out of, or that one section out of Greenbelt into Greybelt. However, I just really think we should be protecting this whole piece of land against all development. Thank you.
Councillor Claire Billing.
I'm also looking at the map, and it is clear that it is stopping the urban sprawl of Hitchin and St. Ibolitz and Gosmore. It's you know, there's a field next to it, which isn't somewhere that, you know, owls live. They like fields with lots of trees. I'm really torn on this one. I would like to vote in favour of, I would like to vote against it, but at the moment nobody's come up with any reasons, planning reasons to be against it. So at the moment I'm just in two minds. I know that, yeah, I don't know.
I'd like to add, I'm sorry, Emma, I'll come in after Emma.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say that it does feel very tricky. I agree with Councillor Billing. I very much regret the loss of the trees, which we only considered a couple of months ago and put tree preservation orders in this council chamber. However, I'm hanging on to the fact that it is 3% of that parcel that identified as Greenbelt by the council, and it is surrounded by development on three sides. They are building Pound Farm now. It's not a hypothetical. And that also the fact that if just that eastern parcel is developed, it might safeguard the western parcel from further development and maintain some semblance of a green belt to stop the spread of Hitchin further. It is a logical filling in of a little parcel surrounded on three sides. So I think, regrettably, I'll probably have to vote in favour because there is not a material reason to refuse it.
I think I'd probably both between Councillor Billing and Councillor Fernandez has kind of summed up what I think. It isn't clear cut. I don't think any of us like the loss of trees. I don't like the loss of trees in any circumstances. But what I'm hearing lots of nice reasons why people aren't happy with the application, but with the greatest respect to the committee, I'm not hearing many material considerations for grounds to reject this. this proposal. I'm not sure I've heard one actually. And I'm afraid we're back to our old friend of the tilted balance here, which applies. We cannot ignore it. We've had people come and try and tell us we can ignore it, and that doesn't work terribly well. And the harm, whilst there is undoubted harm from the loss of the trees, I don't believe that that substantially outweighs the benefits of 41 new homes, 50% of which are affordable, and that's our decision here. Do we genuinely think that the heartfelt and genuine concerns that people have raised, do we think that substantially outweighs the benefits? Because, you know, if we didn't have the tilted balance, we can say, well, it's 49, it's 48-52. We like that one. So we can swing that way. But if that's not the case, does it substantially outweigh? Do the detriments substantially outweigh the benefits? And that's, I'm not telling you what to think. That's a decision you have to make. But I will make the point, I'm not hearing many material considerations for the arguments. Thank you. Claire Winchester.
Sorry, just two this time. Thank you. So if we're looking, I'm not like we're casting around trying to find reasons to turn this down, but I think something that we haven't discussed fully in this debate yet is a little bit more around the traffic issue and around the historic country lane character of Mill Lane, and what we've had some evidence about traffic problems when it's used as an alternative when London Road is closed. So I wonder if we could maybe explore that a little bit more. And the other thing I just wanted to raise in reference to some recent minutes from this committee, whereby I hate to say it, but sometimes developers can promise to save trees, but they get knocked down, as we've seen in Letchworth at the Morrison's development very recently. It only takes a few poor communications to really make a big difference when we think we've done something to protect as much as we can of the natural characteristic of a development, and it's still through misadventure or carelessness it is less well protected than we hoped. And I just hope that if this does go through, because we think we've protected half of it, that it doesn't end up being less well protected than we hoped as a result.
Thanks, Claire. Just before I bring it in on the road thing, I was just frantically trying to find what Highways comment was, because obviously if we wanted to use that, it would depend on what Highways view is. And
as a country lane, I mean, that's clearly a kind of a historic characteristic, and that is important, I think.
I will bring Councillor Mantley, I think, was going to comment on the Highways issue.
So I was getting a little concerned at the discussion about the diversion to the end of Mill Lane. That's caused by the creation of the new roundabout. There's no way the Highway Authority is going to allow the existing access within a few metres of a new roundabout. They're going to insist, and that's what's threatening the trees. It's nothing to do with whether it's green belt or grey belt.
Just information, I've just found the Highways 3.6 H is no objections subject to conditions, and section 106 contributes to sustainable transport. So unless anyone wants to challenge it.
Ways aspect of the road as much as the heritage aspect of a country lane that I was kind of, and I say we've got two listed buildings in very close proximity, one of which is on Mill Lane, and it feels that it's going to be very difficult to mitigate increased numbers of pedestrians or cyclists without materially changing its character, and we might not want to countenance that.
Oops. Not seeing any further hands raised. Have we exhausted debate? I think are we happy to move to a vote? Right, I got to find where I am in my notes again there. Sorry. Just make it clear what we're voting on. Okay, so the proposal in front, moved and seconded, is that we grant planning permission subject to the conditions that I read out earlier. So if we can, I can ask you to vote.
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you, Robbie. Okay, I believe the next section of the meeting we're going to have to exclude press and public anyway, so I'll give a pause to allow members of the public, etc., to leave. Where are we in terms? Ready to go? Okay, let's crack. Oh, hang on. Hey. We crack on. We've just gone back online just to try to go offline again. Right. Where are we? Item 8, exclusion of press and public.
Still part 1.
We're okay. Right. Eight, exclusion of press and public. I propose under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 7 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Acts as amended. May I have a seconder? Councillor Clayton got there first. Thank
Happy
you,
to
John.
second.
Right. So we vote on the exclusion of press and public.
Yep, that motion is carried, Chair. Thank you.
Here we go. We good? Right, lovely. Item 10, appeals. Sean Greaves to appeal. To present even. You got 25 minutes, mate.
That long. I'll keep it brief because you probably want to see who's going to be the next MP for Clacton. We have had an appeal lodged relating to a detached dwelling at Ickleford on Snailswell Lane. That's written reps. And we've had 2 appeal decisions. Both were allowed. one related to a condition and the other related to certificate of lawfulness. Fortunately, those types of appeals don't count in terms of our performance on appeal decisions, so those aren't monitored as part of the performance statistics. So unless members have any questions about those two allowed appeals, that's the end of what I have to say. At the next meeting, we will be reporting a rather important appeal decision, which was an enforcement appeal at the George in Baldock. And one that's probably going to be reported in the planning press, if not other press as well. Thank you.
That item was for information only and no vote is required. And at that point, I close the meeting. The next meeting is on Thursday, the 3rd of September. So a whole 3 weeks grace before the next one. And I look forward to seeing you then.